good evening, and welcome to this series of conversations that we'll have with the industry on the changing workplace, on the way the workplace is changing, some of the challenges companies face, some of the way they're trying to look for these solutions as they navigate a world, the emerging world, technology-led world, and how they can multiply, if I may use the word, the value of the enterprise with the new talent that they can access at all locations, in the locations that they are in and the locations that they may not be present in. So we'll try and understand some of the issues around accessing of this talent, the use of technology, how can that be a multiplier as well, and some of the cultural context in which these technologies could help them and help companies in reaching out to the right set of people, reaching out to the right set of targets as well for themselves. Because unless companies get to their own target, it might just be a little difficult for them to continue in the quest for, either spending or hiring, whichever way you look at it. So first, as we speak about this, just to give you a little context as well, this is one of the series that we're doing talking about the changing workplace and the collaboration that the workplace is seeking today. We'll go to other cities, talk about similar conversations, similar issues, and of course, ultimately it'll find its way in the paper to make sure that this could be learning for companies which may not have been part of such a conversation. Ultimately, if everyone learns out of this, it'll be something probably worth our while, and we would have played our small role in helping companies understand, the smaller companies, the larger companies, the companies that are willing to change and make good of this opportunity. So let's start first, and Nikhil, I'd like you to come in and talk a little bit about the big picture, the changing technology, changing workplace, and what are the challenges that it places on companies which want to work through this era of disruption and maybe disrupt their competition or disrupt some of the industries that they are in.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashutosh. So maybe to set that broad context, I think while we are talking, is it okay? So while we're talking about workplaces, maybe I'll just zoom out a bit. I lead the Future of Work initiatives for Deloitte India, and a lot of the research, a lot of the work that me and my team have done have largely centered around future of work transformation, which in a way is what you also said, right? Which is what are organizations trying to do to be future ready? So they say that, okay, let's keep the business as usual stuff aside, but what does it take to be ready 3 years or 5 years down the line? And to that, I'll just take a step back and just talk about the lens with which we look at it in terms of future readiness, which is the workforce, and the workplace, right? And I don't think the three of them are exclusive, right, or disconnected in a way. I think there are a lot of interlinkages. So I just thought I'll paint a broad picture, 30,000 feet. What are those macro trends? And maybe each of those can be discussed along with some of the nuances on culture and team. So at the work, right, at the fundamental construct of how work is getting disrupted, I'd say there are probably 3 mega trends or 3 mega factors which is changing how we define, measure, and value work. The first thing organizations are really asking each other, their peers, the organization within itself, is simplification of work. So given that we've all become very complex as each organization grows, how do you look at this theme of simplification of work, which is to take a tough stand and actually challenge the value of work that is being done, right? And I'm sure all of us admit 20 to 30% of the work that is done in our organization probably doesn't actually add value, right? It is probably people doing something for the sake of legacy, but do we fundamentally question the impact it has on customers, stakeholders? I think that's a question a lot of leaders are asking within, right? Which is, what percentage of our work is actually value adding? What do we need to stop doing? So that's one big trend around work. Once you've figured out what work then, of course, needs to be done, I think the second mega trend around work then is the augmentation of technology. And that's a very mega trend. Obviously, I'm not trying to define it too minutely, but that's when, the entire concept of human-machine interaction is obviously playing a big role. So when we talk about all forms of automation, whether it is process automation, or it is machine-led automation, or it is even the new buzzword, which is generative AI, and all of those other things are essentially technology augmentation, right? Which is how are machines or how is technology helping humans be better at what we fundamentally do. And I think the third big mega trend, or what I'm seeing is, as I speak to leaders, is that there's a lot more focus, a lot more respect being given these days to the components of a job which are fundamentally human, right? As humans, what are we best at? We're best at creativity, we're best at problem solving, we're best at storytelling, which no machine still can replace, right? Even partly. So I think the third mega trend I would say is probably how are you looking at, the fundamental human aspects being more important in the configuration and design of work. So that's the first big W, which is the work itself. And, it's probably the most difficult to address because it's not something you can flip overnight and change, right? It is a very long journey. Whether it's automation, whether it's simplification, it doesn't happen overnight because there's a lot of change management involved in any of the transformation. The second big W that we, of course, then talk about is the workforce itself. Now, there are again a few mega trends which I think are driving the future of the workforce. The first, of course, is the emergence of the gig workforce and a real challenge to the construct of what permanent employment, of what full-time employment means, right? And I'm sure in all our industries, all our organizations, there are various levels, definitions, adoption of the gig workforce, right? When we look at technology organizations or big tech organizations, honestly, there's actually not that widespread an adoption of gig workforce because they believe that technology IP has to be within. But if you look at service companies, if you look at GCCs, there's a lot more adoption, a lot more experimentation which is happening for these new job models. I think that's become very important, right? That's one big on the workforce. The second mega trend, I probably zoom in when we talk about the workforce, is the multi-generational composition of the workforce, right? So if you just look at 10 years back, 2010, you probably had 80% of the workforce being, Gen X, Gen Y, right? And a very few Gen Z coming in. Now, we did the research, we had some data from, the companies that we work with, and it's a very clear prediction by 2035, you will actually have 30, 30, 30. Right? Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha coming in for the remaining 10%. So Gen Alpha would have started interning by then, and in 2035, Gen Alpha will be 20% of the workforce, right? So you're not going to have, you're going to have a composition of workforce which no one has ever seen before, and no one knows what the dynamics of that organization or those organizations is going to be. Right? So that's the second big trend I thought I'll talk about under workforce. Now coming to the main W, which of course we've been talking about, the workplace itself. I think here I'd probably break it up by industry. I think a lot of conversations that we have in the media, in our daily lives, focus on the elite workforce of the country, or the workplace of the country, which is, professional services, manufacturing organizations. But if you actually look at India's workforce, right, and we did some research on this also, 95% of the workforce, right, is employed in a company, in an organization, or in an entity which is less than 10 employees old, right? And I'm obviously we have to look at, agriculture workforce, all of that being part of this entire combined workforce that we have. And when we speak about the demographic advantage that we have, the demographic dividend that we have, that's coming up, I think it's a very important shift because everything that we do, everything that we say is actually only for the 5%, right? But that 95 to 5 will probably become 80 to 20, 70 to 30 as we go along. So we're going to have lakhs and lakhs of employees who are going to come into this professional environment without having the education, the experience to actually be able to cope, right? I mean, we talk about hybrid workforce, we talk about remote hybrid working models, but 95% of the country's workforce has no idea what even that is, right? But as the employment scenario changes, a lot of that workforce is also eventually going to come. A lot of other factors driving it, but I just thought I'll paint this picture because while I'm not spoken about specific practices, I'll look forward to my peers here to speak about some of the examples, but I just thought workforce, workplace, and some of these trends, I think they're all interconnected, but I just thought that's a good place to start.
Thanks so much. That paints a very interesting picture because that 5% kind of caught my attention, because if you look at the big picture and look at the larger numbers of India's some 50 crore workers, just about 10% is in the organized workforce, just about 10%. So the rest are agriculture workers, daily wagers, construction workers maybe. So we'll talk about that as well. Balaji, we'll come to you about that, the construction workers part as well. But Berkadia, as a distributed workforce company, what are some of those unique challenges that you see, and how you circumvented them and how you solved for them?
Sure. Thanks, Ashu. So Berkadia, from a footprint standpoint, we are roughly 55% of our employees in the US, 45 in India. In India, we have Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Gurgaon. Now, I think just before this, we were talking about the pandemic and the post-pandemic situation. So before the pandemic, it was 100% work from office. And then pandemic hit. 24th March was the lockdown, you said. On the 13th of March, we decided everybody works from home from that day. That was a very uncomfortable transition. Nobody knew how to sort of deal with it. And it took some time and a lot of coaching practices, getting people comfortable, providing people the technology to work remotely and so on and so forth. And then people got very, very comfortable. 2 years, we all worked from home. But then it was time to come back. But now we had all become very comfortable, working in our T-shirts and Bermudas, and whenever we wanted to. And I was just sharing this anecdote with you, right? Because I was discussing this with one of my friends that, hey, how's this work from home thing going on? And he said, work from home? I think this is living at work. Because I think we were all working 14 hours, 16 hours, whatever it takes to get the work done. And I think there was some amount of loss of efficiency and productivity, because what I could achieve by just walking across and having a conversation with a colleague, I had to ping him and wait for him to pick it up and then respond to me. If I was free, we'll have a conversation. So I think we were losing time there. But now it was time to transition back, and there was pushback. People were not ready to come back. So we did a couple of things. So one of the things that we did very successfully was we invested in the workplace. In those 2 years, we completely refurbished our office. Right now, what we have is state of the art. And we use that as a point of attraction for people to come back. Of course, we didn't come back 100%. We are still at a hybrid model. But initially, even to come to a hybrid model, there were a lot of excuses being given.
Which is the best one you heard?
The best one I've heard is, I'll come back once my kid completes education. So I said, so which standard? Standard 2. So,
nice way of saying no plans.
yeah, exactly. So, but very creative. I mean, there was an element of garnering sympathy, so to say. Oh, it's about the kids' education. But then I think what we started doing is running a bit of a campaign. So we communicated a lot. I think we have a communication. The internal communications team played a very significant role. So we we had a sort of celebration. We called it Culturescape. So we designed it around people from different teams interacting or building different teams, interacting with them. And one of the things that we realized is that there was so much pent-up energy of not socializing for those 2 years. When we did this, the workplace, the people got berserk. Everybody was in it, everybody was competing, they were singing, they were dancing and all of that. They were also doing their work. But I think that event, of course, it had free food along with it. That event was a turning point where a lot of people then opened up to the idea of coming back to office gradually. Of course, I mean, as Berkadia, we are a very people-centric organization, an organization which really, really values its culture. And one of the things that we realized was that without us being together, at least for some part of our work week, we were losing out on that. So, we follow a principle called outward mindset. This is from the Arbinger Institute. So it basically says, you are as important as I am. And therefore we say we need to understand each other's needs, objectives, and challenges. And we figured out that unless we are together, talking to each other, shaking our hands, I think somebody said this, it was taking a backseat. So over time, I think it requires some amount of push also, some punitive actions, because I was checking with him. I mean, they do 100% work from remote work. Moonlighting was an issue, and we till date have found 2 cases. We immediately took punitive action, and we made it very popular. So that was not a done thing as far as Berkadia is concerned. So multiple approaches, helping our managers deal with, a part remote, part physical workforce. So all of that contributed for us to now come to a very, very stable hybrid state that we are in.
Okay, stable hybrid. Now that has one element. Santanam, from your perch, from your position, how has the challenge been, accepted and solved for?
Okay. Hybrid, I would say, is a huge opportunity. You can have the best of both worlds. We don't need to be in the office, going through the traffic every single day. Make our presence in office purposeful and intentional. There is no point if there is a team of 10 members and we say you have to be in office twice a week. It doesn't make sense for those 10 people to come on different days. Then it's just a tick mark. Right? So we have evolved. To start with, the first 6 months, 9 months, it was all about, hey, just get used to coming back, right? Get out of your Bermudas, come wear your formals and come to the office. So that was the first 6 months. Then the number of days, right? We are at the stage where we want the presence in office to be for team engagement purposes. Now, team engagement could be whiteboarding, could be sprint planning. We are largely agile, sprint reviews, retrospectives. So that way, everyone collaborate in a meaningful manner, and also go for lunch together, right? In both formal and informal settings, you build teamwork. And the agile teams that we talk about, they are for the long term, right? That those set of 7 to 10 people, we want them to be together and grow together for a year, 2 years, 3 years. That's kind of the time horizon we look at. And it is not possible to build those relationships by just being remote. So that is where we are getting to. And we are a distributed workforce as well. So Broadridge, we have offices in New York, in London, some of the Asia locations. And all the locations do pretty much the same thing. Do team exercises once or twice a week, and we get people in team rooms in all the locations, and then we do joint calls. They're all quite effective.
Okay. That's interesting way to put it because, well, global teams also expect a certain way of doing things to be being done by each center. Kartik, financial services, very touchy issue. Data, data is so important. Security of data is so important. Tell us about your experiences and the last 2 years particularly. How has it panned out in terms of the opportunities and challenges for you?
Sure. I think Sudipto and Santan covered a lot of those aspects, but one thing that we have to look at is trust. We had organizations which are trained to have a lot of managers. Team is in front of you. You keep talking every day. You keep asking questions. But the moment this goes remote, they're not in front of you. You were used to doing operations in a monitored way. You had hierarchies. But when person is remote, you need to trust. Trust that the work is estimated right, it's completed right, on time, and so on. That also results in another factor which again leads to a little bit of disruption is empowerment. How do you drive the productivity from a remote workforce? Trust them to do it. For example, in financial industry, you need FINRA. For example, if you're in insurance, where you're dealing with broker-dealer relationships, which need certain amount of monitoring always. That's to your point of how do you get some of these complexities of regulatory aspects from a financial industry perspective. So we made sure that even if we are remote, all the compliances are taken care of. We are empowering people. We sent people, in fact, for example, for FINRA, if you need fingerprinting, we sent them to a certain location in each city and said you can go there, do the fingerprinting and so on. So that was an empowerment, that you don't need to be in the office and do certain things. Then follows the aspect of delegation. How effectively do you delegate even if you are remote and get the work done? Third aspect that comes is once they came back, then how do they adjust to the workforce? They were used, for example, night shifts. When you're working in a night shift from home, it's a little different than how you work a night shift at office. So how do you transition into a different culture, get back to the normal routine? And that's where the hybrid also helps. You're not burning out. We relax the night shift requirements. We said we can be on call, for example. So those are some of the adjustments, I would say, in terms of delegation, trust, hierarchy, transparency, trust, and so on.
So the 100% remote company, Anil, that trust is so important. How do you imbibe that in a company which is delivering value, delivering its targets? When it's 100% remote, how does it begin to ensure? What's the first step?
So to set the context, right, we are global organization, multiple geographies, different time zones, right, employers, different contractors, different cities, right, it's widely spread, right. Now, our agile teams constitute, like, they are part of the agile teams which work like 24/7, right. So that's a technology worker space, right. And then we have call center agents who take the calls of the customers, right. So that's broadly the context of the workforce which we are dealing in our organization. Now, when this change happened, right, one of, again, our CHRO, and the focus was from location-centric to people-centric, right? How do we move from there, right? So it's kind of separating the work we do from where we do, right? So, and again, to be honest, post-pandemic, it's an iterative process. Every year we kept on changing, right? But one thing which we did consistently is hear from our people, right? What do they want, right? Some people say, okay, we want to come back to office. Some say, okay, maybe some introverts, they want to work from home, right? They are more comfortable there. But we heard their voices, everyone, right? And then we gave the flexibility or autonomy to those agile teams to decide. Again, you're the owners in the organization, right? You decide and what works for you, right? As a team, you work together. And we get that feedback every year, like twice a year, right? Get that. We have small working groups which focuses on those feedback, gets that continuous improvement. Now, and then along with that, we made a lot of changes in the way we work also. So just to give a couple of examples, right? So again, there is an overlap that is needed with the US teams, right? So we again, employees said from India, we have to work in the ESTRs, it's taking a lot of time. So we heard that feedback, we made changes saying we have predefined collaborative hours. These are the times where the meetings will happen, right? Clearly defined time window. And then the employee, so for example, 3 hours is the meeting times, right? Rest of the 5 or 6 hours, they can decide whether they want to do it in the India morning hours or later. It's the employee choice, right? So we take that feedback and again, we are great places to work, number 2 in India, right? We consistently hear the feedback, so that has helped. But as I said at the beginning, right? Change, every year we are changing, right? Based on the feedback we are getting, based on the workforce which is coming into the organization, it's a consistent change, dynamic iterative process. Yeah.
I wish some people were listening, even in the media business, because I wish we could do it. Unfortunately, we can't. Bharat, give us your perspective, because we've heard from some of the leaders. That should work, I think. That should work. We've heard from some of the leaders, some of the fundamentals which they try and follow within their companies. How does the wider industry, and we're trying to make this a learning process for the entire industry, how does the entire industry look to do this in a world that's constantly evolving?
Quick check. Yeah, thanks. How would I look at this perspective, the pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, the 3 areas? Because the word hybrid or remote work started from there. I'll give 2 perspectives of it. One as a CISO and a CCO of Value Momentum. The second perspective being a VC and a startup mentor. How do I look at those perspectives? So first one to start with quickly, what we do at Value Momentum. What we have done is how do we recreate the whole workspace and then transform the physical workspace into virtual. So what we have identified is what is required to be there while they work physically, and then while transforming this into a virtual thing. So we have recreated the whole thing into a virtual environment. Today, if I see, am I worried about productivity loss? No. Am I worried about security, compliance, data privacy, risk? No. Am I really worried about employee satisfaction in terms of letting them to work from home? No. There's no major challenge as such. In fact, what we are doing is we're not asking them to come to office. We are inviting them to come to office. So there's a difference in it. So, and that change, how we wanted to bring it gradually, is to make them feel what they are missing when they are not at office. I think we did a kind of a senior leadership thought process that continuously went. From the technology perspective, we were able to help the chief delivery officers to make sure that their productivity concerns are addressed, very well addressed, using again technology. And the second one, being a CISO and a CCO, I may have to ensure that all the security compliance requirements are taken care, so my clients are happy. Touch wood, there's no data breach, no security breach that has happened in the history of Value Momentum last 20 years and especially post-pandemic. And the whole workplace transformation from physical to virtual happened in 1 week for us. 3,000 plus global workforce, everybody moved. They had to move, of course, there's no other way, we did that. But later on, I say that I agree with a couple of my colleagues here, especially the financial sector part of it. You talk about FINRA, and I'm talking about a little more risky thing called the HIPAA, high trust, what is high tech, those kind of stuff which deals with the PHI, PCI data, that talk about it. The best part is we have leveraged all the available technologies, we have invested in them, and then today what we have seen is that by just letting the employees to work from home happily, freely, but using the company provided laptops, using the company remote working policies, sticking to the work hours, whatever they have it, so they know that their productivity is being measured to such a granular way. And when they understand that, with all the due respect towards their job, the paycheck they get, I have not seen anybody raising any concern. Initially, there were some privacy concerns of installing such tools on their laptops, but we worked with our attorney and then sorted them out. So today, when they're at office, when they're at home, they're going to use the same device, same controls. It appears. So CDO, the Chief Delivery Officer, addressed concern. CISO, CCO concerns are addressed. Now we're coming back, our Chief People Officer concerns, to see that how do we make sure that that doesn't impact that morale, and then make sure that they continue to work at home, but they would at some point of time start missing the environment office. So as I said that, Santana, what I heard from you, that yes, what you made them to realize that if they're not coming to office, there are these things they're missing in terms of it. And they started really missing. We make them feel that they're missing it by many ways. So that's helped us to get them back. The main important for us as a Valuum, a trusted third-party technology service providers for our clients, what they've asked us is how do you measure the overall productivity? Because most of the T&M engagements, and absolutely till there's no concerns raised by any client because of the kind of technology tools that we adopt, and that we make sure we have been very, very transparent in terms of making sure that the job is getting done, all thanks to the technology again. Last point which I wanted to say that is, even we run a hybrid, we run fully remote, we have multiple offices across the globe. We recently opened something in UK and then Canada also, apart from the other countries. We see that whether it is a full-time employee, a full-time contractor, part-time consultant, a gig worker, irrespective of the engagement we have with that individual resource, they are all no productivity concerns, no security concerns, no compliance concerns. And at this point of time now, we started seeing that when we asked them, hey, start coming back to office, they started 1 day, it made 2 days, now they are coming to 3 days. And last 3-4 months I've seen, they start coming all the 5 days to office. And I agree with you, Sudipto, that we have done the same thing in our office, that they come back, they love the office more than they work at home. So that's something which they're able to enjoy while they're at office. So the collaboration perspective in terms of productivity, we are able to address 100%, no issues. But the collaborative in terms of the human interaction, that is something they also know that unless they go to office, the virtual collaborations is not really that effective. You can shake hands, give a hug to your friend, all that can't happen, right? So they just started loving coming back to office. So I have seen that as long as we're able to address these 3-4, the CPO, CISO, Chief Delivery Officer concerns, yes, we are good. And in fact, one last interesting point was, and then we helped we put up these business cases to our CFO. He loved seeing that he's spending less today. Thank you.
Oh, that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. Balaji, so it's very interesting, the conversation we're having so far, largely for a lot of the technology-led companies. Yours is a very different business, real estate, present in Bangalore and Hyderabad, and also more than one locations in the city. What does collaboration mean to you? How could you enhance that after, I'm particularly talking of the last 2 years. What could be done to enhance that? What have you done?
Yeah, we have decentralized our operations. Earlier, all were in one office. The major decision makers, the general managers, the next level managers used to sit in one place and monitor. But now what we did is decentralized to the major project sites. So we have only about 45 people in our head office. The entire 500 and odd people are working in different locations. And the technology helps a lot with a lot of innovation that is happening with digital twins and so on. We offer this BIM solutions, digital twin and all that, and train our workers to use that effectively so that we can even monitor our sites, what is happening there, what is the waste that is there, how the productivity is coming in. The workers actually, after getting trained on the technology and usage of the technology, they are so happy, and we don't need to be behind them to deliver the output. They are happy, we are happy with it.
Okay, that's an interesting way decentralization has worked.
Yes.
Usually, Anand, the way you look at companies and some of the flavor that I heard from everyone, you're trying to centralize the complexity and distributing the ease for the user. That's broadly the trend for a tech company. How are you seeing the workplace evolve, which could make companies go for maybe technology, maybe keep some things away from technology where you have the non-measurables coming in?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I made some notes. Definitely one of the trends that is coming across almost everybody, I think they are using their offices as an incentive to get people. They have all focused on making sure. So I was actually wondering, so where do I get my next $1 million, right? If none of you have problems, right? But good that people have really focused on making sure the workplace and the investment in the workplace is should be the incentive for people to work from office. And when, not that I work for Logitech, I'm saying this, but even otherwise, I would have also expected the same. I would have expected my IT team to put focus on how easy it would be for me to work from office versus working from home. We are all working from home, but I'm sure we all know, and we are going through it every single day, working from home has its fair share of challenges, right? Nothing like working from office. But working from office takes that effort. So if the workplace is a great place to go, nothing like it. That's a big incentive. Yes, that came across as a trend. But as a service provider, we are seeing another trend, and that's something that surprisingly I did not see any of you talk about, which is, and we keep engaging people like you all the time, and what we have heard in the past, maybe it's addressed, I don't know, I would look forward to your guidance on that, is whenever you invite people for meetings, right, it's a given that not everybody is going to be in the same place at the same time. 90% of meetings are hybrid, which means there are always some remote participants. But what we have seen is people don't switch on their videos, right? I don't know if you're facing this in your organizations, but we do come across people talking to us almost every single day about this. So as a company, our focus today, to answer your question, Ashutosh, is how do we motivate? We made hybrid working easy for people. Most of you also spoke about having overcome the challenges of, Bharat mentioned, almost overnight he had to make 3,000 people work remotely, and it was not such a big challenge thanks to tech. Yeah, great. So we had a role to play, not necessarily in your case, but with other organizations. So having overcome that challenge, the next challenge was, okay, we made people not lose productivity, business continuity was addressed, security was not a concern, there was no productivity loss. These challenges were addressed. The next challenge was, the next best thing to being in person is obviously video. And people were not switching on video, right? So we are right now focused on how do we encourage people to get on video. Now that they have got used to doing remote work, which was the first challenge, and that's addressed, how do we take on the next challenge? Because as we have acknowledged that remote hybrid is not going away, right? For at least the foreseeable future, none of us are going to be working all 5 days from office, and all our colleagues are not going to be in the office all 5 days. So that's a given. And we have overcome that. How do we now make sure that collaboration is even better? So that's my request. We would like to hear some views around how people are encouraging their colleagues to get onto video.
So I can probably talk about that, because that was an initial challenge that we faced. We kind of subtly mandated it. So the meeting invite said that if you're joining remotely, your camera needs to be put on. Yet some people will not. And I personally would shamelessly tell them to put the camera on. And I would joke that if you want to wear some clothes or put some makeup on, do that. But please be on camera. I can't talk to a gray screen. I have to talk to a face. And now, at least in my meetings, and I know a lot of my directs, everybody is on camera. You have to just persist. And people will eventually come across. Sometimes it is genuine, and people say, you know, this is the reason why I can't, and we respect that.
Yeah, a couple of points that I want to quickly add. when I get into meetings, I see a lot of people not on camera. So that's a very common occurrence. Two things that I've noticed. One, we have to lead by example, right? If it's a one-on-one or a 3-4 member team, the senior most person comes on camera, there is that pressure. Right? Second, also understanding why the other person is not on camera. It could be because that person is not at a place that the person is comfortable to come on camera. Right? And or it could be because the person is not dressed. A lot of times people just get up in the morning, sit in front of the laptop, right? They may not be camera ready. So some of those nuances, if we understand and if we encourage people to be camera ready, and we have also provided during the pandemic and later some monetary incentives for people to get stuff to become more like their environment at home to be camera friendly. And virtual backgrounds are a huge help, right? The blur and also the virtual background. So sometimes educating people on how to make use of some of these tools can help.
Yeah, Kartik, your point came to mind. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to add, I think a lot of it is sometimes people don't understand why you are asking them to come online. I mean, I have had this in private conversations. Sometimes I ask, what is the challenge? Just showing that little empathy helps. And they open up, why do you want to see my face? Right? Because they have always been in front of a gaming console or whatever. They interact with their partners on the game outside and so on. They don't understand why. And you have to explain them that it's impossible for me to understand the verbal cues. I don't know if you are listening to me, attentive to me. Is it an affirmation? Is it a dissatisfaction? I do not know. I have to figure out from intonation, and sometimes even that is like, and all, right? So unless you are available and focused on me, eye to eye, that's important. That's how that's the whole reason why we created offices, is that eye-to-eye communication, to understand each other's feelings about it. Intonation is one thing, but feelings are more important. So it could be a feedback conversation, it could be an appreciation conversation, but I should know that you are able to understand what I'm trying to explain, and same for you. So once you explain these things, this improves. It needs patience, but I find it surprising that many times we don't even realize that people don't understand why you want to come online.
I'll just add on the lighter side that you mentioned, one of the senior people, and I can't name the person or the company, his comment was, and there was a 4 or 5 people conversation and I was there, he said to the person, I hope you're not looking so good that the screen could crack. Please.
So on a lighter note, I think, Anand, your next million honestly can come from India's poorly designed and poorly equipped conference rooms, right? I can tell you, I mean, I probably go to about 7 to 8 clients every week, right? And I can confidently tell you, it's not the issue of the individual user. I mean, of course, turning on videos is a cultural thing. But, you know, on a not so light note, I think there's a fundamental concept of inclusion, which is also very important. You know, not everyone is able to make it for whatever reason, right? Someone's probably sitting in Asia somewhere when the core meeting is happening in India, and I see that so many times that the people in the room are obviously together, so they're able to talk to each other and they're able to, of course, have a much more productive conversation without really caring for someone who's joined virtually, and the equipment and all of that, you know, it's never designed. It's never designed in the flow of things, right? It's just real story and real situation, I feel sometimes. I think the simple plug and play model, I think there's still some room for improvement there. But the point on inclusion, I think the point on video and not being on video, I think fundamentally also comes from the kind of interaction. And you know, at Deloitte, we did this study for a client where we tried to help them say that, you know, what aspects of work do you actually need to come to office for? What aspects of work do you think you need to get on a video call for? What aspects of work do you not need a call for, right? A simple WhatsApp is adequate. I think Of course, we broke it down, we did some analysis, waterfall, but if you look at it, all of us, probably 40-50% of work is me or I work, right? Which is you're writing something, you're reviewing a document, you're creating a document, and of course, there's a small part of collaboration there where you learn from something. That's still core me and I, right? And some of that can be done remotely, sitting in a Starbucks, coffee day, doesn't matter. I think the other side, which is the we work, right? That's where this becomes really important. There are aspects of we work where we, for example, do not have the conversation if it's not on video, right? I'm sure all of you, I mean, if it's a conversation on ethics, right? It's a meeting on ethics. If it's a compliance issue, right? If it's some really bad escalation of a client, you know, I think that's how we break it down, because I think it becomes a lot more easier for the other person to understand, to your point, right? Why you have to come. And I think every organization would benefit if a little bit of this internal analysis is done, and then probably that's communicated to the employee base at large. I think everyone will benefit from that.
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Nikhil. I just wanted to elaborate, just in case somebody else in the room is facing some of the challenges. He mentioned two very important points. One is there will always be remote participants, and there are chances remote participants don't feel part of the meeting because of a variety of reasons. Simple example, brainstorming in most organizations, even today, happens on whiteboards, despite the advent of so-called smart panels XYZ, right? Especially people in this room, I'm assuming we belong to that era of writing with a marker, erasing it, having people in the room, etc. So, and cognitive learning, you got to write for you to register. So, people in the room obviously have a great access and visibility of the whiteboard where the brainstorming session is happening. But given the fact that there will always be remote participants, how do we ensure people who are logged into the meeting remotely also don't feel left out? And most often, and this we hear from our customers, remote participants have great ideas, but they don't contribute because half the time they are not able to be heard, right? And they don't switch on video, so they are not seen. So if you are not seen, if you are not heard, then you are not in the meeting, right? So how do we make sure? So there are the good news is, thanks to technology, today even remote participants can see the so-called physical whiteboard as good as people in the room. So that brings in a lot of meeting equity. Remote participants don't feel left out. And by default, he also touched upon the other point of conference rooms not being all that great, right? Yeah, that's a very valid point. That's also in our understanding, because prior to pandemic, people had video conferencing rooms. Today, there are no video conferencing rooms. Any place that you do a video meeting is a video conferencing room. It can be your hotel room, it can be your home, it can be your office room. And that's a fact. Work happens everywhere. Meeting technology has to adapt to the environment. It's not the other way anymore. But what people did, like Bharat had to enable 3,000 people go online overnight, a lot of people had to enable people to get on to video meetings in short time. So they thought one size fits all. They just bought one camera, fitted all the rooms, and that caused whatever it caused, right? The experience challenges. But there again, I'm sure all of you have gone through this. You need to do, as a service provider, I'm saying this, you need to do, every room has its remediation and whatnot. You got to pay attention to those things. These days, people build offices with mostly glass. Glass, unfortunately, even today in 2024 is not very AV friendly as a material. But there are possibilities of remediation. You do a few things and make them friendly. So yes, there are challenges, interesting challenges, but then technology is also catching up and helping people address some of these challenges.
Thanks. I partially agree with you. While appreciating the thoughts that you expressed, and with Nikhil, that's my son's name.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there are two things to share. Again, I would weigh a lot on the tech side. So we have a boom from Microsoft. Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's doing all wonders for me today. We are extensively leveraging it. We have trained employees on Copilot. We've asked them to use it extensively, understand what it can do, and make sure that today, whether it's IT or even media for us, social or anybody for that matter, this is the one which we're enjoying a lot, and then people are finding it most useful. In conflict of it, there is one thing which is coming up. Again, you may be accepting that. We deal with 90-95% of my business comes from US, though it's an offshore heavy in terms of resource, but it's on-site heavy in terms of business, which comes up, and 90-95% comes from BFSI. The new norm which is coming up very alarming. In fact, they don't want people to use the blur or virtual backgrounds. They want people to use the natural background, what they are. And this is because of security and compliance. So what is happening here is all the laptops are equipped pretty well with the very high-end equipment. So today, and I say that all the fancy laptop that we have given to the employees, they all have very nice inbuilt high-resolution cameras. People are happily configuring some nice fancy background or something blur, and then basically be participating in the calls. Now today, I realized why my client wants no virtual background, no blur. Because he wanted to make sure the guy who's participating in the call, there's nobody who's looking over his shoulder, and nobody else is there with him. So today, I had to make this now mandate for my team, employees, that today, if you are part of a hostel or part of a shared accommodation, there's no way you can work from home. Today, I have seen that today, multiple times people crossing your background, somebody comes back, even for a curiosity, the kids coming and looking at your screen. So what is happening is the concern, today we are dealing with one of the largest US military company outsourcing contract data. Most stringent. They made it very clear. For you, it's a hybrid. I don't want you to compromise anything that you have at office. Everything exactly has to be same. It all depends upon how do you replicate the whole thing. When I said that we recreated, we had to replicate whatever we have at office. So these two things, thanks to the Copilot, it is helping me a lot. Today, all of us see that all of us sitting in the same room, virtually, sitting at each layer. All of us, 20 people, you feel that you're all sitting in the same room. So as long as that kind of configuration is made mandatory, second, leverage the Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot. It does wonders for you, believe me. The third one is to make sure that when people are working from home, wherever they are, please make sure there is no virtual background, no blur. And at that point of time, when I'm saying that, that means coming on camera is must. I want to know who's the guy who's working on my project. And I want to know that while he's working, is the only guy working? Or he's the guy working or not? So today, because I want to make sure that today, forget about those, kind of interviews people are attending nowadays with somebody else representing them. But this norm is becoming a lot more important, especially in the collaboration side. When I say that, every client meeting is mandated that everybody has to be virtual. They have to be at home. They have to be at the workspace. And we have given a very clear instructions. I say that, for example, like my son works for a world's #1 financial services company. And then the kind of norms they shared, if you wanted to be a part of a work from home, I had to invest more than what the company has sponsored, honestly. And because I want my son to enjoy being at home. So to do that, I have to meet those requirements. But I can afford to do that, not many. The second point which is coming up from the other side is, the collaborative customers are asking, for example, I say, hey, what level of technology you're leveraging to make sure your employees are working at home or at office, how do you replicate the same scenario? Today, most of us heard about this room called a white room, or you call it as a white room or some kind of, some people call it the ODC, clean room, whatever you terminology. We are asking people to maintain the same at home. So today that means they have to be behind, that there is a wall behind them, a clean wall. You have it and the light has to be there on the face. Camera should 24 hours be on. And then we have implemented technologies tools where I will be able to randomly capture their picture. They know that today, if they take a mobile, they can't take a picture. That means today, they are not finding any leeway while working from home. It is as good as working from office.
How many companies can afford that? Anyone would like to comment? So while I appreciate that situation, and you just mentioned, Nikhil, Kartik, you mentioned that not each of our homes are like that. We were talking a little while ago.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, the mic should work.
Yeah, so that's true in terms of infrastructure, particularly when people want to work a lot from their native place, which may not be the city. They do not have bandwidth connections. We found that a lot of people connect on their hotspots, for example. That leads to poor connectivity issue, poor experience from both the stakeholders' perspective as well as internal. Also, there are like he was mentioning, in India, it's very common to have a lot of distractions. Parents talking like it's age-old STD, like they're talking to their trunk calls of old, or kids crossing across and other TV running, because we don't have specific workplaces. That's one thing we started having conversations on. And people ask, why can't you allow me work 5 days a week remote? The first question is, how many of us do have office space in India? In US, yes, the occasional dog comes in, the occasional baby comes in, you feel it's cute. But in India, it's pretty much a common occurrence, or too frequent occurrence. So some of these are intrinsic to how our infrastructure is built. If nothing else, you'll have your neighbor getting married and doing firecrackers while you're on a call. Or there are other things that are happening around which you have no control on. So fundamentally, we need to ensure that those are mitigated. We do have a very liberal approach to it. I mean, we are not certainly doing the kind of things that were just explained. Again, we do educate. We do try and understand that. That's why I come on the camera, encouraging. But fundamentally, there are infrastructure-related issues which inhibit a bit of that, particularly if they are in hostels or common paying guest accommodation and so on. So one thing is come back to office or enable that space.
So Anil, what are some of those challenges you face when you have a 100% remote workforce? So one challenge is that he explained. We'll come to the culture part of it. That's something I think we all need to talk about. What are some of those unique challenges that you face in the current times and which obviously needs a solution?
So again, technology has helped us a lot, but still there's a way to go, right? Again, from a knowledge workers point of view, we are still okay, but as I said, the call centers and all the technology for voice calls and all, working from home, right? The bandwidth issues, those are the challenges which we still have. And since, again, I'm part of the financial services industry, right? Like from a data security, and also we have given them virtual desktops. So again, Chromebooks, right? Very, very strict controls are in there. But there are challenges, like in terms of having Teams calls, I can't turn on the videos. So some of those challenges are there. So we are still evaluating the technology piece of it, right? That's a main challenge which we see. But in terms of, like, again, videos not turning on, people, again, that's a common problem. But again, we accepted that. Again, we said it's okay. But the only thing what I do is generally, I'm not on camera because of ABC. So I start saying that every time when I join the call, just in case if I'm not there. So people, at least my directs, they say, okay, they start giving the reason why they are not there. And they can't do it every time, right? So obviously after certain times, they start turning on the camera. So again, it's a culture, slowly, it takes time. But yeah, we are still making progress on that.
Balaji, in your industry, yeah, please.
You know, continuation to Kartik's comment on providing a proper office space in residential units is our top priority. And all our designs that we are doing now, we have a separate office space, home office, designated office with all the acoustics that is going to come in, and it will be connected with a high bandwidth. And also we have in our common amenities a business center, co-working space, and a networking space there, so that they can come down work if they don't want to work from their home office, they can come down. And also we have smart classrooms built in into our communities, whatever we are building now. So that addresses if kids are, attending the classes from home, they can also attend smart classes.
Okay, yeah, you want
I have an interesting
sure, sure.
dichotomy. Yeah, I have an interesting dichotomy to share. It'll just take 30 seconds. When I was just reflecting, everyone speak about, in Deloitte, because of the work that we do with clients, I think what ends up happening in my team, and I've seen that in lot of internal teams, right, is when we have our client conversations, and being a partner, I'm supposed to represent the firm, switch on video, I do that, right? And if I'm doing it, obviously, I'm expecting that from my team, because if you're essentially not having an in-person meeting in front of a client, I'm expecting that the virtual mirror of that, you need to switch on the video. But the interesting dichotomy is, I think in Deloitte as a services firm, all our internal calls, no one switches on video. Zero. Absolute zero.
No cameras are on.
No one switches on camera for our internal calls. They're like, both okay.
That's a good way to approach it. Okay, I'd like to come to the culture part of it, and that's part of the way the firm is organized. And again, I'll say, I do get on a call with some of the consulting companies, and this is something I've noticed. Now that you've mentioned it, then it comes to mind.
We journalists will be
I don't know if it's anything specific to that. Okay, I'll come to the culture part of it. And this is something, why it's important is because of the way we are. We need not follow somebody else's stated policy or implied policies. How does that culture impact the way you work, maybe when you're working remotely? Or, I always think of the person who may not have visited the headquarters. So somebody, let's say, if everyone's working out of Hyderabad, so somebody, let's say, in 100 kilometers away, how does that show up in terms of culture? Would you like to add to that?
Sure. And, I was referring to this earlier that at least in Berkadia, we take our culture as our number one priority. I mean, on my goal sheet, the first thing will be culture. And we use a vehicle, it's called the Berkadia Way. It is essentially a training program, but then it has multiple sort of communications to sustain the learnings of that. And it's not about what do you do, it's about how do you do it. And this comes right from the top. I mean, my global CEO would facilitate this training program in the US. I facilitate it here in India, and it's in person. And that is really the starting point. So it's the message from the top is that these are the things that we do or not do when we are at work. When I'm working from home, I'm still at work. And therefore, every aspect of that is still to remain uncompromised. I think that's the way it percolates. Does it face some headwinds sometimes? It does. But I think, at least in Berkadia, it has become such a strong sense, and it has sort of, gradually seeped into what we say, what we do, fundamentally into the DNA of the organization, that people just get it very quickly. So what we do is at any point in time, the target that I have is 90% of my employees have to be trained on that. So they know what to do about it. And there are what we call Berkadia champions. They are basically go-to people for them if they need any clarification. Within 3 to 6 months, everybody is trained. So everybody knows very equally what needs to be done. And it's constantly being driven. It's that language is always being used in everything that we do. So that's how we sort of keep the culture very alive.
On the culture part of it, yeah, please, sure.
Yeah, I understand that organizations take a lot of pride in culture, and large part of it is true, but cultures are microsms. That's why you have a broad culture, but every team, based on the leader, on the day-to-day interactions, develops its own ways of doing things, let's say. So overall, when we say culture, we need to make sure people are given enough attention to understand their challenges. But a lot of the times, particularly big organizations face this issue, that they don't realize what's happening in one little corner. And somebody might be saying it's okay to be not online, or okay to be online, or somebody's enforcing it and so on. And then they talk. That's another bigger challenge in India culturally. Everything is spoken. The cafeteria is a big source of information than your direct feedbacks, right? So it's important that at every level this culture is spread, and he's making a great point that there are first things on the goal sheet. But overall, we should be not like very forceful about it. We have to be tolerant. Slowly you will get those changes. You should appreciate even if surroundings are not okay. That's one thing I've observed helps. So someone you said, please come on camera, and they're a little shy. You see, it's all right if your hair is not trim and properly. Yeah, so a little bit of that patience goes a long way. And you have to keep checks and balances that you're same across and not allowing bubbles to crop up where cultures, mini cultures, subcultures are developing.
I would like to just add one thing. See, culture is the identity of an organization. Now, behaviors are slightly different from the culture. A lot of time, people might be unaware of how their behavior might reflect on the culture. So sometimes, like for example, caring for people is a cultural thing of many organizations. Now, I may care for a person, my behavior might be interpreted differently by the other person. So whenever something like that comes up, it is our responsibility to educate people, right? And we have, India, I would say, we have not been in the corporate, in the capitalistic environment for as long as, say, the other Western countries are. We are still learning to respect the rules of the road, right? It doesn't reflect the culture of the country. It only reflects that we need more time to understand and change our behaviors. So sometimes that understanding and then not broad brushing everything as culture undermines ourselves, right? So we have a great culture. That's how I see it. Our awareness of how our behaviors represent ourselves and our culture is something that we have to be more wary of.
So I'll also add, and this, Nikhil, you mentioned about this, a multi-generational workforce that's coming in. What does that mean in terms of what the workplace will need in the way it evolves? Would anyone want to come in on that? Would you want to come in, Anand?
Yeah, what we are seeing, definitely Nikhil has a point. The Gen Z, and now I learned one new term, alpha, right? The 10%. Oh my God. Okay. Their expectation from a workplace obviously is very different. Sometimes it takes time to even understand what they are saying, okay? And we have seen in our organization, let me speak for ourselves, our organization. In our organization, we see that these are people who prefer to do a meeting from their desk, not in a room, right? So for them, a good personal workspace environment is what they are looking for. Actually, they are a little uncomfortable sitting with 10 people in a meeting room, facing a large camera, large screen, etc. They make brilliant contribution, but they are very comfortable making that contribution from their desk, looking at a webcam, wearing a headset and not in a room. Logitech is happy. Either ways, it's good for us because we have some compelling solutions for those people also. And I think currently, if I'm not mistaken, India as a country has almost 25-30% of its population people belonging to this age group, right? And when these people, like Nikhil said, become decision makers in organizations, I think the criteria that people follow to select technology is definitely going to undergo a big change. A big change.
Just one point there, Ashu, if I may. See, the risk that we run with looking at looking at generations as generalizations is tremendous. A Gen Z born in South Bombay versus a Gen Z born in a remote village in Tamil Nadu, will their needs, objectives, and challenges be the same? Probably not. And that's why, one of the things is very important to do is to see people as people and understand each individual as an individual. I think as leaders of the of whatever industry that we lead, I think that is the most critical piece, because making assumptions based on some year of birth, I think it completely undermines us as individual people.
So I think, I agree with it. While we're seeing these broad trends, I think what's coming out as a big learning for organization that they have to navigate as a future challenge is, how do I look at each individual with this approach of n is equal to 1? How do I look at designing a policy, or a policy framework, right, or a benefits framework, where it is a lot more flexible, horses for courses, right? Not kind of painting a brush. Like someone who has their own laptop might not need a laptop allowance, right? They might say, I already invest because I want this model, this configuration, all of that. So I don't need a laptop allowance. So where are you giving me that flexibility? I think that's what this challenge of generational workforce is also going to give you, right? Simple things like org structures, right? A lot of us probably are used to command and control kind of org structures, lines and boxes, right? Whereas the new workforce or the new generation of the workforce is increasingly looking at, how do I look at my org structure as teams, right? It's not command and control, not hierarchical, but different configurations of teams working together. So I think that's the bigger challenge. I completely agree. I think it is a risk of cutting, broad brushing everyone, but the fact is organizations will have to look at this fundamental expectation from the different parts of the workforce, which are going to be so different. And you still have to keep everything flexible and configurable. That's a big challenge.
Yeah, I was about to talk about hierarchy. We are used to it. Exactly. But there are other little aspects, right? One, they don't have patience for meetings. Reduce the meetings mostly, right? They endless 4 hours will spend on talking about what we should do. Means when do you work? That's one of the most common things that keep coming. Second, they don't look at someone just distributing work as something that is very important. The role of the manager has to change. Yep. Instead of telling what to do, they like being asked questions. So you say, you did it this way. Is there another way to do it? Is a better option than telling, why did you not use Copilot and get it a better, as an example. Instead you ask, do you think using Copilot would have given a different result? They like that better. So how we engage with them, how we speak, interact, delegate, all of that will have a rapid change. It is changing already. We are learning on our own. When we don't get the output, we think, okay, what have I done wrong? Now I go and change the way I approach people. But yes, it's a lot about interacting with interpersonal skills, like each person has to be understood and figured out as to how we can make them give their best to us.
No, I really love that point, Kartik. And I was reading this probably 6 months back, and it was talking about how technology is going to sort of change the shape of the future of workforce and work and all of that. So this said that there are going to be 3 C's that will continue to exist. The creator, the collaborator, and the coach. So I think the role of the manager or the leader is going to very quickly gravitate towards a collaborator and a coach.
Yeah. Quickly, the 2 things what we have observed as part of this Gen Z, Gen X kind of this thing. We ran a survey among those workforce, especially the age-wise, the category-wise. What we would learned from that is that they're all looking for something called, hey, when are we going for all-out BYOD? Okay. See, I have a fancy Mac. Now you gave me a kind of a rugged, robust, solid, kind of this thing which I need to, probably it's more weighing than the dumbbell that they use to work out. Probably that's something. Coming back, that's one thing. So then we said, we started working on BYOD and BYOMD, being your own mobile device. So it's for phone, a mobile phone, and it's for the laptop. We said, go for it. Instead, we did a quick math. Because I know it's with all due respect to the CFO community here, the language they understand is the kind of top line, bottom line kind of stuff. So we went back and say, hey, if you are disowning providing and maintaining endpoints, what are the benefits that we are going to get it? While not compromising on security and compliance. That's one thing. The second one, first of all, why should we even provide it? We have seen that all the 100% employees that we try to recruit, either freshers, graduate, everybody has a laptop. And they love that laptop and they want to work on that laptop. You give another laptop, they keep it aside, but that definitely will be there beside them. So they're already loving that. Then I said that why should I make you to probably keep it aside? You continue to work on that. But I'll provide you a virtual environment. So we just working with another startup which mentoring them. They have a solution as part of it where you just create a workspace, 100% secure compliant. We've done a POC. Absolutely. So go completely BYOD, go for BYOMD. These are two things that is coming up. The other point which is very, very important for us to acknowledge is we have seen when you see the culture, I said that is slowly becoming more casual than being professional. That's a big problem that we are facing today. If you look at the challenge that is coming up from the workforce, irrespective of the generation, they're trying to be very casual at office. I'm not even talking about their attire, even their attitude, being so casual. Earlier when you come there, so today I don't think I can go to office other than the blues, whites, and the dark trousers, right? Of that generation. But now, if you look at, we have to tell people, I'm still wondering how many of them are going to listen. HR sends an email, hey, you're not supposed to wear a round neck t-shirt. You're supposed to wear a collar t-shirt. Okay, the same guy is wearing a round neck t-shirt and participating on the video call from home is acceptable today. So some of those changes that is coming up, we are making sure that there's no culture conflict, especially. That is something which we are ensuring to work with them. You can be casually dressed, your attire can be casual, but not the attitude.
Very interesting point. I'll come to you, Anil. Again, when you mentioned that 100% is remote, it's kind of I can't get it off my head. In tomorrow's world, and this is a broader point that I wanted to ask, a lot of talk of renting of your service rather than being an employee. How does the organization adapt to that change? And why I ask you this question is because of that 100% remote work, if you'd like to.
So when you say renting of a service like contractors, you're saying?
You could be renting your service to company A for 4 hours, maybe company B for the next 4 hours, or maybe 5 hours or 6 hours in a day, or maybe 4 companies for 2 hours each. So what does that mean for the, when we are talking workplace collaboration, what could that mean? I'd like to attempt. It's a choice.
Again, I'm still thinking, when you say renting the work, or is it like?
Yeah, so you are a contractor for the organization, and you're working for 4 different places for 2 hours each, maybe.
Yeah, so again, that will not work for us because it's a financial services organization, because of the agreements we have with our clients, right? Obviously, that we will not approve that, right? Renting is not an option. The only thing which we are doing is we are having collaborations with some of the universities and the startups, right? Where we give the problem statement, right, to the university professors. So we have tie-ups with the universities and say, okay, we want to do some research, but we don't share the data, right? So we share the problem statement, they'll come up with a solution, we'll see whether it will fit us, so we'll fund those projects, right? Similarly with startups, we are doing some work, right? We're still evaluating. But the actual projects, definitely not. Yeah, we don't have any plans.
And since you mentioned startups you're working with, is that a normal practice to do? And how's that impacting the work that you do? Again, it's a different kind of a collaboration we are talking of.
Yeah, so one of the things, right, earlier we were talking about the new workforce coming in. Innovation has been a key theme, right, for the people who are coming into the organization, right? They want to do something new, right? Giving those opportunities is also, again, at every level, right? At a team level, in their agile teams, how do they innovate, or like at a CTO level, right? How do we innovate? So creating those platforms is key. And when we tie up with this, like startups and all, right? Again, they are doing a lot of interesting stuff, right? Again, the new technologies in the fintech space and all. So the same work, if we do in our organization, considering the data constraints, like simple example, moving to cloud, right? If we have to do that in our environment, there's a lot of regulatory requirements. But maybe there is a pattern which a startup can build and share, right? How it is done, right? So that will save time for us, right? Some of those things. And then that way, some of our young generation, right, employees who are coming in, they'll get the opportunity to work with these organizations, right, and solve those problems. And then again, within our organization, we have created innovation platforms, like where anyone can come in and submit their ideas, right? What do they want to do, right? Like kind of a crowdsourcing some of the ideas. Like I have some bandwidth, there is an idea out there, right? I want to work on it. So again, a lot of those innovation initiatives are helping us.
For you, Santanam, give us a sense of, I still think that the employee, and I read a little bit about it, the employee of tomorrow, and we'll come to you about it as well, is not the full-time, the way workplace is for tomorrow. What does it mean? Is that happening? Do you see that happening in the near future, in the next few years?
I don't see it happening as much in India. India is still not a consultant, a contractor type market. People take comfort in being associated with a brand which is world class, right? So I don't see it happening in India. It's already happening in the US. The level of freelancing, the level of gig work that happens in the US, UK, and other more mature Western markets, I see it will take time to come to India. It felt like we'll get there post-pandemic with the demand-supply imbalance, the boom, and the preference for remote work, a lot of people going to their hometowns and working from there. Very quickly, as the market tightened, it changed. So I don't see that happening in the near future.
You wanted to come in?
But I agree to that. But I think if we extend the timeline, maybe next 10 years, probably it will start happening here. And that's where I think the elements of security and still sort of sustaining the culture, what do we stand for? And that's very important. So, I was talking about moonlighting, right? I mean, that's reality. And I don't know this is true, but on the lighter side, somebody was sharing with me that apparently this is a very high-selling item on Amazon, that there's a device which keeps tacking on your mouse pad of the laptop, so that if remotely you're being tracked, you'll come across as being online. How do we deal with that? What if I am renting my services to a competitor and I have access to data? I think that is what we need to prepare for. Will it happen? I think it will happen in the longer run.
So that raises the issue of security as well for devices and the future, again, of the collaborative workforce.
I want to first share something that we as an organization are doing on this topic that we just spoke, which is the gig workers, freelancers, etc. I think Santanam is right. India is probably not ready today, but I think Mr. Sudipto is also right. Eventually it will catch up, because I think we will all see in our lifetime a time when people are actually not willing to be permanent employees of any organization. Maybe it will just happen pretty soon. And I've as a person who's running a business, I've already started seeing this. Sometimes I face challenges in finding the skills in India for some of the projects that we want to execute. And for your information, we already use freelancing services, but these freelancers are not Indians. These freelancers are people based out of the US. And of course, I also belong to that generation which is so conservative, always worried about giving access to data because that person is not my colleague, etc. So we are very, measured in terms of what we outsource, but we are definitely doing that as we speak today. But these are not customer projects. The data that we share is not any external data. These are all data that are not confidential in nature. So we have started using that, and I think as a model, it has merit, right? You agree on a scope, you leave it to people, they deliver it to you at their convenience. It's not something that's bothering you as well. You have time on hand, so it will work for certain types of projects. Now coming back to the second part, which is your question, as people who are providing services, what we have done is keeping this in mind that eventually there will be a time that you will all be using such services. We have started bringing in security even in devices that people probably did not ever think about of having security built in. For example, we have, in fact, we have it on display here, we have keyboards and mice that have security built in that encrypts data that is exchanged between the keyboard and the computer. Okay, so, and most of our solutions that work in the rooms actually work behind the platforms that you use, Microsoft Teams or Google or Zoom or whatever they are. So all the security policies that you apply on the platform automatically gets applied to the devices as well. So things like what we spoke earlier, you mentioned about people being mandated not to use background and blur. Yes, obviously those are also things that we are seeing, and from our side we are making sure that the video resolutions are the best, and if somebody is in the background and they are overlooking somebody's shoulder into the screen, obviously those things will be captured. And we are also building through software some of the intelligence that tells you that there is more than one person in front of the camera, right? So those are intelligence that we are building in. And these things are, and these are again, all of what I spoke to you were challenges that the customers, real customers were facing. And they asked us if it could be done, and it's being done. So I think it will evolve as people face more challenges. They bring more issues to our notice. Whatever is possible can be done. The good thing is, not just with us, I think across in the video world, devices are just 50% of the solution. Most of the enhancements that are happening through software. So people don't have to worry. Enhancements can be provided.
Okay, very interesting points that you mentioned. Balaji, I'd like to come to you, ask about the remote working opportunity. You mentioned about homes being designed in a certain way, but tomorrow's remote locations, maybe in tier 2 towns, maybe in tier 3 towns, what change could we expect from realty companies so that people working there could be part? And we spoke of that, beyond that 5 or 10% of the people, what could they experience?
That's exactly what I was discussing when you were not there. So we are also planning for a hub and spoke model where big companies, they also wanted their workforce to work in tier 2 and tier 3 towns. So we are planning to build communities. So they will have a social infrastructure ecosystem like that of a workspace here. A mini workspace can be created there. We are visualizing that and working on that, so that the workforce from the villages or nearby towns, they can go work there, and then within 30 minutes or 1 hour, they can reach back home. And weekends, they can get connected to their families there. And the cost of living is low there. The employees will be available at a little cheaper cost for the companies. I think the future is going to be, creating a quality infrastructure in those locations for workforce to live and work there, including co-living spaces.
Nikhil, last words. And again, you know, there is a term used, again, I'll use a media term that we use very often in the media. It's called the donut. A donut is round. So what you start with, you end there. So Nikhil, your turn.
Well, I'll just first start with the fact that I think the CISO's job is not getting easier, right? But I think that's for sure. With pagers and walkie-talkies exploding, you know, I think the job of the CISO is increasingly challenging, right? But I think just to probably just reflect on the last 10 minutes and the great conversation on the multi-gen workforce, on the gig workforce, I think one important thing I have realized, right, based on my conversation with CEOs, CHROs, strategy officers, right, is that the jury on gig workforce is still out, right? Very few organizations have been able to figure it out. The benefits are clear for some jobs, but what organizations are failing or struggling to do is fundamentally being able to carve out a gig, right? I mean, just let's look at this room, right? You probably have about 7 or 8 people today who've come on a gig here, right? Photographers, they've come on a gig. If you translate that to the corporate environment, it's very difficult to carve out something and say that within my confidentiality, within my IP, and within my compliance rules and regulations, how do I carve something out? I see the benefits. I get access to a wider talent pool. I get something for a lot less relative cost, right? Because I'm not employing someone for the year. If I have a marketing gig, I give it to someone for 3 months, let's say a design work or even copy work, could be anything, right? But I think the fundamental struggle is that you can only configure those gigs if there's a little bit of that work redesign that, again, needs to happen. So you spoke about donut. I started with that simplification of work. I'll come back to it because it's such a transformation that is needed in most organizations. It doesn't get the bandwidth. Everyone's so busy in daily fires, business as usual. But I believe that organizations who truly will add shareholder value, will unlock it over the long term, are organizations who are able to use the tools that are available to you to simplify work. We've become complex. All of us have become way too complex.
Okay, simplicity is the way ahead. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. And we look forward to hearing from you and your peers in other industries as we go to other towns and we take the series to other towns. And of course, some of the ideas that come in as well. Thank you indeed, everyone, for being a part of this conversation.